Hello, sir. I can hear you now.
Yeah. Okay, good. So how was your week?
How busy was my week? Yeah.
Yeah.
Not too bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
How are the COVID numbers there? Is it still low or has it gone up like India?
No, we are having a peak right now.
Is it? Oh,
There are very many patients in hospital,
okay.
and there are many who are severely sick.
Okay, so that is
Yeah.
not a very good news. India last month had
Yeah.
sort of come down quite a bit, and then now suddenly it is going up from
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. Even here, it was a step. Yeah.
Hmm.
Mm.
In fact, last month it had come down to almost less than about 10,000 cases a day. Now suddenly it's gone up to 50,000.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you have the
Good af-
vaccine accessible there?
Yeah, vaccine they have had. What about you all? Have you had the vaccines?
No, I've not had
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Good evening there, yeah. I'm afraid of the vaccine.
Why? Nothing happens to the vaccine. I have had the 2 doses.
eh,
Which vaccine are they giving in Nigeria?
AstraZeneca or something like that.
Yeah, AstraZeneca is what we had.
That they say they want to wipe 3 billion Africans away.
Hmm?
3 billion from Africa. They want to wipe
Oh.
us off.
No, I don't think so. Vaccine is okay. But, of course, see, we don't know about the newer type of vaccines. But Covishield or Covaxin are traditional vaccines. So they basically inactivated virus particles. So it won't cause too much of a disease.
Okay.
So it's safe to take it.
Okay.
Only thing is, sometimes it may not be very effective in the sense that it protects only about 70% of the people who take the vaccine. So you still have to take all the precautions like wearing mask and distancing and all that. But if it's available, it's safe to take. India almost 5 crores or 50 million people have taken the vaccine. And the serious side effects are within only about 20 or 29 people or something like that. I think we lost Dr. Elijah again. So how was your week, Dr. Celia? Did you see any urology patients? Are you able to hear? I'm not, I think you're to unmute. Yeah, but then you need to, you can start studying though. You know, go to that One Dot Surgery website and start doing the course. So that as soon as you receive, then we can start doing the program.
Okay.
Because suddenly when you get the scope and then you don't know what to do with that. So you need to learn what to do with that.
I've started reading your notes.
Okay. And also start doing the multiple choice questions. After each lesson, when there is a quiz which says multiple choice questions.
Okay.
So once you answer that, that will go to the record. I think
that after each lecture, there are questions.
Yeah, and the left, in the left, there is this thing called quizzes.
Okay.
So then click and then for each lesson you add the thing.
Okay.
Okay, let me just check the thing here. See, go to that Academy, One Dot Surgery.
Academy.
Yeah, that one, and then you open the course. Okay, then a lot of.
Go there now.
No, you can do it anytime. If you want to do it, if you have a computer, you can do it now. It says on the left, there are course, home, setup, emails, lectures, course quizzes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you need to click it. And after you open the lesson, there is a place for mark as complete here to click that also. Okay, I think a lot of people seem to be having the connection issues. We have one Dr. Tungi. Hello, sir. Can you
Akintade.
hear it?
Yes, I can hear you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. I think probably your connection is the best. The other two are having difficulty in connecting. Where are you from?
Connecting, that's
my
okay.
connection is good.
Okay.
My connection is very good.
Oh, your connection is good. Okay, then shall we
Yeah.
start for today's class?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so usually the way we wanted to arrange it is that you would tell me what you saw. So what are the any interesting urology patients you saw today, this week? Dr. Celio, did you see any urology patients? Because
None, sir.
None for this week.
that's interesting. See, a lot of surveys we have done in many parts of the India. We found that about 6% of all the any OPD you go, 6% of the patients will have urology problems.
Wow,
So
that's huge.
yeah, and when the good thing about it is that about half of them can be treated just with the laptop cystoscope and a little knowledge that you gain by these classes. And that is the reason we're asking you to do the thing.
Oh, that's fine. That's
Okay.
fine. Maybe we are not picking enough.
Yeah.
Or maybe
super.
it's not. There's no reporting is low.
Okay. So what are the urology problems that patients present with? So maybe we'll start with that. What are the normal or usual urology problems that you can think of?
Basically, UTI, when you look at the infection side.
Okay, urinary tract infections. Then
urinary tract infection, or probably
I'm not able to hear clearly.
tract dysfunction, urethral dysfunction.
Okay, urethral dysfunction. Then
urethral dysfunction.
Dr. Boto, can you hear us?
Yes, sir. I can hear you.
Okay, you also start contributing because you have seen probably more urology patients. So what are the urology patients that you see?
Sir, most of the urology patients that we see, we work in a very rural place. So we see a lot of urinary retention. Urinary retention and a lot of
retention. Then
ureteric colic, a lot of ureteric stones and renal stones.
Yeah, just 1 minute. See, whoever is not speaking, please mute the phone so that others can hear clearly. Okay. Now, Dr. Boto is talking about the problem that he's seeing. So he started with urinary colic, then urinary retention. So what are the other things, Boto?
Yeah, most of the time we have a lot of renal stones and renal ureteric calculi that cause a lot of problems.
Okay, now actually, so today we'll, because the first thing you said is about urinary retention. So today we'll talk about urinary retentions. So what are the causes of urinary retention? So we'll start with Dr. Celio. Tell 1 or 2 causes for urinary retention.
Urinary retention.
Yeah. So what is urinary retention?
It's inability to pass urine.
Okay.
As when desired.
Are you passing urine now?
I'm not passing urine now.
Yeah. Do you have retention? No.
As at when desired. Yeah.
Okay. So you have to be a little more specific in that. It's inability to pass urine, even though the patient has a very acute, very strong desire to pass urine.
Okay.
Okay, but then can he have a retention without the desire to pass urine? Dr. Tunji?
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I agree totally that urinary retention is pretty common also here, but it's usually in a particular age group, and the commonest cause here is BPH.
Okay, good.
It's usually BPH, and most times they usually come in the wee hours of the night, and they usually sometimes a failure to pass a catheter successfully. At that time, when they get to the emergencies, you are left with no choice than to just pass a suprapubic catheter, at least to relieve of the pain, of the distress first, before you now start looking. But most often than not, it is usually BPH, and definitive treatment that we do in the private practice here is to get it out. Prostatectomy.
Okay, we'll before that we'll go to Dr. Boto. Dr. Boto, what do you normally do if somebody comes with acute painful retention?
So we do try to pass a catheter.
Okay.
Sometimes we're able to pass the catheter, and sometimes if we are not able to pass a catheter, like Dr. Tunji has said, we also put in an SPC.
Okay, so before that, we'll start with the first question I asked. Is it possible to have retention without any pain? So we're talking about acute painful retention. So is there any cause of any other retention? When there is a urinary retention but there is no pain, is it possible?
Yes, sir. I have seen cases of patients with diabetes or people who don't have sensation.
Okay.
Come with a big abdomen, they don't feel any pain.
So whenever there is a retention, the first thing you need to differentiate is whether acute painful retention or is a chronic retention. As you correctly said, chronic retention can be due to diabetes because they don't have any sensations, or any neurovesical dysfunction, any neurological problem. Okay. So, and classically, Dr. Tunji said it occurs in old people because of BPH and in the middle of the night. Why is that? So, Dr. Elijah, can you explain to them why this retention occurs in the middle of the night, or what is the common, how is it initiated in BPH?
Yeah, so in BPH, at night, what happens is there's increase of ADH in the body, and therefore you have retention, you have a lot of urine. And what happens is now the urine that accumulates, a lot of urine accumulates, and therefore you need a lot of pressure to go against the obstruction by BPH.
Okay.
Therefore, you end up with retention. Yeah.
Okay. Welcome, Dr. Anup. Hello, can you hear us, sir? Thanks for joining. I think we are discussing about acute painful retention of urine.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay. So we have been pointed out, Dr. Boto, he is from Nagaland. He said he often sees urinary retention when they have no pain.
Yeah.
So that is probably because they have diabetes and there is no sensation or any neurovesical dysfunction. You can have a huge bladder without pain. And Dr. Tunji, he pointed out that whenever they see painful retention, it's usually in the middle of the night. And Dr. Elijah is trying to explain why is that so?
Yeah.
Okay. So usually what is the capacity of the urinary bladder? Anyone?
350 to 400.
Okay. So then what happens if you overstretch? So see what happens is that whenever the muscle contracts, it has to start at an ideal position and then contract. So when they pass urine also, it is the bladder muscle which contracts and then pushes the urine out. So if the bladder is already stretched, so then it is difficult to start contraction. So that is one of the reasons why they go into painful retention. So as Dr. Elijah said, in the night when you don't get up so often to pass like in daytime, mostly because you're sleeping, ADH is decreased and so on. So the bladder distance to more than the normal capacity, and that is the reason why initiating the contraction will be difficult. Is there any other reason for that happening? So if you see a lot of patients, another history you might ask is most of the time will start if for some reason they are not able to pass urine. For example, they are traveling by an airplane or a bus or somewhere, they don't have a toilet. So when they have the urge to pass urine, they don't have the facility to pass urine. So they keep postponing passing urine. So then once they get a toilet and they want to pass urine, they won't be able to start the process. Okay, so these are, so when they have symptoms of BPH, so either in the night, in the middle of the night, or in the early morning when they get up to pass urine, they won't be able to pass. Or for some reason, they tried postponing passing urine, and then they're not able to pass urine. So, but any other thing, changes in the prostate which causes this? So normally, when it starts growing, it grows about 1 centimeter, cubic centimeter a year. So it's a very slow growth. But then why suddenly they start having acute painful retention? Why do they have this retention?
No, sir, I don't know.
Okay, what are the things which can happen in the prostate? Boto, you would have seen some prostate surgeries. So what is the whitish thing that comes sometimes?
The question is not clear.
Some purulent fluid.
Okay, the question is, just 1 minute. So the question is, why does suddenly they go into retention? See, normally the prostate is a slow growing organ. It keeps growing slowly. It starts growing around the age of 40s and then slowly increases in size. And a person who is normally passing urine, why does he suddenly go into retention? So one other thing is, one reason is that you start postponing passing urine. So we delay the thing, then the bladder muscle stretches too much, and then you need the muscle is not able to generate enough pressure to pass urine. So that is a common precursor. But then even without that, sometimes you won't be able to pass urine. So what happens in the prostate, which can suddenly make it increase in size? So I was asking Dr. Boto, he has seen quite a bit of the surgeries. So he was saying there is some whitish secretion. What is it called?
So because of prostatitis, because of infection.
Okay, so see the prostate secretion, what is called
there could be infection.
Huh?
Prostatic infection, hemorrhage into the prostate.
Okay, good. So if there is any infarction or if there is any inflammation of the prostate, or then is any obstruction, obstruction to these ducts which secrete what is called copper amylase. So these things can suddenly increase the size of the prostate. Okay, so that is another common reason why the acute painful retention occurs. What about in younger age group? Can you have acute painful retention? Does it have to be only old people?
So in younger age group, some cases that I've seen is urethric calculi.
Okay, urethric or
urethra. Urethra.
Okay, so urethral calculi would be there. Any other calculi? So before it comes to the ureter, where does it?
Bladder.
Bladder. So sometimes bladder calculi or urethral calculus can cause obstruction. Why does this occur? So which type of calculi will block the bladder? Is it small ones or big ones, or what is the rough size?
Yeah, large one. Big calculi.
Big calculi.
So usually what happens is that big calculi becomes big because it doesn't really cause an obstruction. Because the urine can still flow around it, and even though they'll have irritative voiding symptoms, still they'll be able to pass urine. So Bhutto, you have seen one or two cases. No? So what size of the calculi which is blocking, which it caused retention?
So there were small calculi.
Yeah. So
maybe 10 millimeter.
Okay. So why does Bhutto say 1 centimeter or 10 millimeters? So that is that has to
I
be
cannot be specific.
Yeah, you're correct. But why is that? Because it needs to block the urethra. So what is the normal size of the urethra? What is the normal size of the urethra? Last class, okay, Dr. Sally, last class we're calculating, no? So if it is 1 centimeter, roughly how many French will be?
1 centimeter. It maybe 1/3 or so. 1/pi.
1 centimeter is large.
1/pi, something like that.
Yeah, pi is what you remember, Dr. Elijah said, but I told you a simpler formula.
Oh, sorry, I was not at the last section, but I know 1 centimeter is pretty large.
Okay, it is called, okay, Dr. Elijah, you can enlighten the group about how to convert French and centimeters.
Yeah, you divide by 3.
Okay, so, but if you want to calculate, centimeter into French, then you multiply by 3.
Yeah.
Okay. So 30 French is the usual size of the urethra. They're roughly about 1 centimeter in size. But then it depends again on the shape of the calculus. See, normally they're usually elongated. Why is the elongation like that? But you've seen many stones that we have been removing. Why is the stones elongated?
I don't know, sir.
Okay, so because
maybe because it's formed inside the tubes.
Yeah, so usually most of the stones, they don't primarily form in the bladder. Most of them originate in the kidney. So as it comes down the ureter, the shape becomes like a rice grain. So if it, not the length, if it is the diameter of the stone is about 1 centimeter, they are the ideal ones for blocking the urethra and causing retention. But if they're larger, sometimes they can block, and then intermittently there will be relief. So if there a young person comes with the urinary retention, so one other thing to suspect is the vesical calculus or urethral calculus, which is blocking it. So how can you differentiate it as a vesical calculus or urethral calculus? Dr. Sally, any ideas? How can you differentiate whether the stone is in the bladder or in the urethra?
Okay. Well, that of the bladder will be around this.
Bladder, I didn't know.
Over or around.
No,
I don't know.
Okay, Dr. Elijah, any idea how can you clinically differentiate whether the stone is in the bladder or in the urethra?
So I think the symptomatically,
both present with retention.
Yeah. Okay.
Because the treatment is different if it is in the bladder or if it's in the urethra.
Yeah, I'm not sure about
that. Okay, Dr. Boto.
Isn't the composition? Are we talking about the composition of the calc?
Not composition. How to differentiate? Find out if the stone is in the bladder, which is blocking the urethra, or is it in the urethra itself? Because the treatment will vary for both.
Will be different. Okay.
Yeah. So how do you clinically find out whether it is in the bladder or is it in the urethra?
Can I make a guess?
Yeah.
Clinically, yeah.
Yes.
I was thinking that if it's actually from the bladder, you're not likely to have pains, but if it's from the urethra, you're likely to have lumbar pain preceding that retention.
Okay, but then urethral calculus also originates in the kidney, so they could have a history of
referral pains. Okay.
Yeah. And Dr. Elijah, you're trying to guess something?
Yeah, so in terms of catheterization, it will be difficult to put a catheter if it's urethral.
Yeah.
It might be possible with the bladder. Okay,
so before that, Dr. Boto, you're correct. Dr. Elijah is correct in that. The treatment is different because if it is a bladder calculus, you can actually put a catheter and safely wait for a urologist to come or electively treat the retention. But if it is in the urethra, then as Dr. Elijah said, you won't be able to pass a catheter. So clinically, how can you differentiate?
So honestly, what I have seen so far is I saw urethral stones that were stuck in the meatus of the penis.
Yeah.
It's when I knew it was urethral calculus. Otherwise, I will never know whether it was urethral or bladder calculus.
Okay, even if it is in the either in the meatus or in the shaft of the penis or in the bulbar urethra, most of the time you will be able to palpate the stone.
Okay.
So, and the stone, see, normally unless you have a very massive erection, the urethra is soft, but the stones are pretty hard. So you'll be able to feel the stone where it is stuck. So only two places they'll get stuck. And most common, as Dr. Boto said, is in the meatus. Okay. And the other place where it will get stuck is the bulbar urethra because that is where the curve occurs. So if you look at the bladder, the urethra will come like this and then go like this. So this is bulbar urethra is another place where they can stuck. So you can actually clinically would be able to feel the stone. So if you're able to feel the stone in the bulbar urethra or this thing, if you have the means, then you can go ahead and remove the stone and put a catheter, or you'll have to do a SPC. But if it is in the bladder, all you need to do is for immediate treatment, put a catheter. Okay, so how will you remove the calculus if it is in the urethra? Dr. Boto.
Sir, I have for stones that are in the meatus, I have tried doing meatotomy.
Okay.
I think I made some mistakes. Some
Hello,
urethral
hello, sir.
stricture happened.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Can Dr. Saliu mute his mic for now? There's a lot of background noise.
Okay, then Dr. Saliu can.
Sorry for the disturbance.
Please, when you are not speaking, maybe you should mute it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Boto. So, what are you saying?
For the cases where I saw urethral stones on the meatus,
You do a meatotomy, okay, then?
but then I had some urethral stricture on the meatus.
Okay.
I don't know where I went wrong. For the bulbar urethra, I don't know.
Okay, or the shaft also. See, the
Yes,
thing
sir.
is, I mean, the question I'm asking is, a lot of time it is tempting to put an artery clamp or some instrument, test addeds or something, and then pull out the stone. Do you think it will be possible to do that? Yes or no?
No, because the stone has occupied almost all of the.
Yeah. So see, what you have to realize is that the stone is blocked, and not even a little bit of urine, even though they may be trying hard to pass urine, is able to come. So there will not be any space for you to pass any instruments between the urethra and the stone and then catch it and pull it, unless you break the stone. So if you have the means for breaking the stone, so you have a lithoclast, you have something with which you can break the stone, then once it becomes smaller, then you may be able to take it out. So normally what we do is, because we have the lithoclast, we break the stone of the lithoclast and then take it. But otherwise, if you try anything, as Dr. Boto said, you will cause strictures, because the moment you damage the urothelium, then when healing occurs, it causes a stricture.
Causes stricture, yeah.
Yeah, so any tissue, when it heals, it contracts. And a circle area, if it contracts, it becomes narrow and forms a stricture. So, Boto, how do you mean, if you do a meatotomy and remove the stone, what do you do? How do you do the meatotomy, and how do you make sure that stricture doesn't occur?
We try to suture the mucosa of the urethra.
With?
How?
With, yeah. I don't know how to exactly say it, but
See, so what you have to do is, see, the moment you cut and suture anything, what it, as pointed out a little earlier, it'll cause stricture. So you need to widen it. So what you do is, you cut at the 6 o'clock position or lower down, and then you take a skin flap and close it, so that once you cut, it becomes wide like this. And then with the skin, you need to close this gap. Maybe later on, when you find a proper video or something like that, we'll put it up. But then, unless you widen the opening, then it'll cause strictures or meatal stenosis later.
so you mean you stitch the urethral mucosa to the skin?
Yeah, so you develop take a skin flap. Okay, you make a U-shaped incision like that. Okay, then you divide the urethra. So then you'll have a cut space like this. So then over this, you need to suture the skin.
Okay.
So, but then the problem is, it'll become something like a hypospadias later, because you shifted the orifice from the tip to further up. But then that is better than having a stricture and letting the fellow have urinary retention again. Okay, so that is for the thing. And if it is in the shaft or in the bulbar urethra, again,
it will be good. It will be good if we can have a video of of that urethra. Yes, if we can avail us. You know, we are not. That's not very common in this environment, so we barely have seen such. But I'm going to ask you a question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure,
I have seen two cases, almost seven years apart, that have said that they have passed urine with difficulty, but by the time they passed the urine, they could see a stone from it. They could see a stone. In such cases, how do you determine if the stone is actually from the kidney, or is from the bladder, or is from in that case, how do you determine that?
No,
in a young man, it's just
so when they're passing, they're able to see the stone coming out.
Yes. They are able. One is known for not taking enough water. Okay. So at a point in time, was asked to take about 2-3 full bottle of bottled water, and over a period of time, he was able to pass that stone. And ever since then, he has changed his attitude. He's been taking a lot of water, so he has not had any stone, or he has not reported. Okay. But the other one is a bit younger. Is in the early 40s, and he passed that regularly. So, and unfortunately, you have not been able to get a scan to see the stone before it is being passed.
Okay.
So I am a little bit bothered on what to do to such case.
See, what happens is that, as you said, very rarely, especially in children with malnutrition, they can develop primary stones from the bladder. Otherwise, almost all the stones are from the kidney. Okay. And the kidney stones, as long as they're less than about 5 millimeters, they can comfortably pass through the urinary tract without any problem. And there are some people with metabolic abnormalities. Frequently, they keep forming stones. And if they're like the uric acid stones, it may not be visible on X-rays. Even many of the other stones also, early stones may not be visible in the X-ray. But most of the time, whatever be the cause.
Sorry, can you repeat that? That is very important.
Which one? Say uric acid stones.
You said Okay.
Say, okay, metabolic abnormality you suspect if they keep forming recurrent stones. If they have bilateral stones on the both sides, and they pass stones very frequently. See, normally if somebody, most of the time, it is idiopathic. Nobody knows the cause why they form the stone. And once you have a stone, they have about 60-70% chance of forming another stone in the next 10 years. So which is a fairly high incidence. But if there's
anything not visible on that X-ray.
Uric acid stones is not visible on X-ray because they are not radio opaque. Even infected stones, again, depending on the amount of calcium, that opacity is there. An ultrasound, unless it is in the kidney or bladder, in the ureter, is very difficult to find out by ultrasound. So you will miss it. But then whatever be the cause of the stone, there are many studies which show that if you're able to pass 3.5 liters urine in a day, they will not have any problem with the stones. Whatever stones will form will pass away. Okay, and again, even if it is more than 1 or 2 centimeters, if it is a flat stone, I mean, if it is like a rice grain, if they drink sufficient water, if there's sufficient push from the bladder. Bladder pressure is not only the detrusor muscle, bladder muscle pressure. It's also how much you add by abdominal pressure. So you can really contract the abdomen and push the urine out. So they will be able to pass most of the stones. And if they naturally pass the stone, it usually causes less problem than artificially trying to take out. So one other thing I was trying to tell is that if you, you should not be tempted to put an artery clamp or some instrument in the urethra and try and pull out the stone without breaking it. Because then what happens is that it's very tempting to do, especially if you feel the stone in the urethra. It is there. So it's very tempting to sort of put a artery clamp, push
something
it and pull it out. Yeah. That
to eventually cause stricture.
Should avoid. You either do as Dr. Boto said, if it's in the meatus, do a meatotomy and switch over the flap and take it. And same thing in the shaft or in the bulbar urethra, you can either leave that as an opening so that when the fistula is there and they pass from there, and later on you can close it. Or if you're closing it, you have to close it. If you open leathers, you have to close it the other way so that the lumen size increases. So that is about urethral stones. And bladder stones, if it is in the bladder, you'll be able to pass the catheter. Sure.
So for the
there's a hand up.
Bulbar urethra.
And just one minute, Dr. Boto, tell me,
For that bulbar urethra stone, can we use a cystoscope and use the lithoclast at the same time and try to break it? Is that possible?
See, if you have a cystoscope and lithoclast, it's easy to break. See, once you break the thing, again, what you should do is you should break in the middle of the stone, not at the sides. See, normally if you bladder stone, kidney stones and all that, you have seen us starting breaking from up one side and slowly going in. Here the difference is you first break at the center and drill a hole so that the stone collapses and becomes small. So if we have a lithoclast, that's the ideal way of breaking and removing it. So the important thing is that you should avoid injury to the urothelium, which has already been inflamed because the stone is there. So injuring it is very, very easy. And once there is an injury, it causes stricture formation. So we don't want stricture happening. Okay.
See the stone at the center. The center of the stone is where we hit. You should not hit the sides.
I didn't get what you're saying.
So
if we have a lithoclast, you can break the center of the stone.
Okay.
Let's say if there is this thing, the stone at the meatus, you can sometimes you can see the stone sort of pointing out of the meatus, and you don't have you're not a urologist, you don't have a lithoclast. What else can you do?
That's where the surgery comes in.
Can you do something? Have you done that?
No. I don't have that experience. I've not even seen a meatus stone. I was going to ask that both the bulbar or the bulbar stone that you've just described, that you people are exposed to a lithoclast. We don't have that. Rural, we don't have that. So,
but actually, it's not a very expensive equipment. We can easily buy a thing. It costs about less than $1,000, but it's a very useful.
Less than $1,000.
Yeah, good ones, and you can even cheap ones available have a half the price also.
Okay, that's fine.
So
that's fine.
So what we did was you can ask the assistant to hold very tightly. So then he can take a small nail and he can hammer and break the stone also. If it's at the meatus. Because how does the lithoclast? Yeah, I mean, yesterday, last time class we described how the lithoclast works. Dr. Elijah, can you describe to them how the lithoclast works?
Yeah, so the lithoplast has a tip, a pointed tip that basically hits at the stone back and forth, back and forth.
Okay, so it has a rod, which it has a handle, it has a rod, and the tip of the rod goes and hammers the stone. Okay, then how does the hammering occur? With the lithoclast.
The tip, yeah. So the tip keeps hammering.
Okay.
Same place, back and forth until the stone breaks. Yeah.
But how does it happen? What is there in the handle of the lithoclast? And the machine.
Yeah. So is it pneumatic pressure, sorry, that pushes it in and out?
Okay.
Yeah. So pneumatic pressure keeps pushing it, yeah.
Okay, so there is in the rod segment handle there is a bullet. Okay, that bullet goes and hits the rod like that. And the movement of the bullet is by frequent pulses of compressed air or oxygen. Okay, the machines which have compressed air are more expensive, but the machines which use bottled oxygen is cheaper. So that releases, and the machine releases the gases and pulses. So that makes the bullet go and hit the thing and come back, hit and come back. So then multiple pulses occur. So slowly the tip bangs and breaks the stone. Okay, that's how the lithoclast works. So if it is in the meatus, you can, same thing, you can try with the nail. But again, you have to be very careful that you're hitting only the center of the stone and very slowly without injuring anything. But if very desperate, can be done. But ideally, you should have a lithoclast which you can use to break it.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, then I think we have only a couple of minutes. So again, a reminder for all of you to please finish the lessons, and there is a section called Mark as Read. So click that when you finish the lesson so that we'll know that you have completed the course. And on the left side, there is course quizzes. There's multiple choice questions about each lesson. Please answer them, and the computer will automatically correct and give you your score. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah. So let me share a case.
Sure.
So I have a 22-year-old boy with a 1 centimeter stone. That's 10 mm in the ureterovesical junction. Yeah. So I was thinking of doing a stenting. Do you think that would be enough, or you think might need ureteroscopy eventually?
So see, the thing is, if you're able to do the stenting, it is that will suffice.
Okay.
But the problem is, if the stone is at the ureterovesical junction, it'll be difficult to do a stenting unless we're able to do a URS and break the thing. Because what happens is that the ureter comes, and then there is a curve like that. So, see, normally when the guide wire, it goes in and then it straightens it out. But if the stone is stuck in the curve, usually the stone is stuck in that curve. So the guide wire may not be able to go. So sometimes what happens is that the stone will be sort of projecting out of the orifice. Then what you can do is you can have the grasper and gently keep pushing at the stone so that stone can either come out or move around to give enough space. Or we can try with the hard end, normally you're supposed to put the floppy end for the guide wire to push it in. With the hard end, under vision, you can try manipulating the stone a little bit so that it comes out. And if we have a hydrophilic guide wire, then you can use a hydrophilic guide wire to see if it goes in. If it goes in, then that should be enough, because the stone will automatically come out as soon as the ureter starts dilating. So we said the ureter dilates about 2.5-3 times the normal size once you have this thing.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, then thanks all of you for joining. Hope you enjoyed the
Thank you,
class
sir.
and looking forward to it
So
next week.
informative.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, sir.